Well, good morning, everybody. Introducing myself, I'm Trina Cooper, the General Manager for Popup, and just thank you for making time today out of your busy work schedules that you've got to jump into our Popup pop-up chat. The session is being recorded and it will be made available later today on YouTube and on our Facebook page, so you can rewatch it again or share with those that haven't been able to make it this morning. Just some housekeeping to note that your video image may be seen when we share the presentation on our website and social media. So please ensure that you have your camera turned off if you want to be incognito. And if you can just make sure that you're muted as well, just so that we can focus on Brendon. If you do wish to ask any questions, down the bottom of your screen, you've got a chat function. That's how we use that. So you can type your question into there. If it's relevant to what Brendon's talking about at the time, I'll interrupt and we'll ask the question. Otherwise, we can just save those for discussion at the end. Brendon will talk for around sort of 25-30 minutes, and then we will have just the quick Q&A at the end. Next week, we have got Joanne Rama, who is jumping in to do a talk about supporting Māori whānau. And so that'll be next Wednesday, the 20th of May at 10 o'clock in the morning. Details for that will be emailed out with this as well. And I will now hand over to Brendon. So Brendon Smith is from Kids Need Dads, and he's talking about the role of dads and perinatal distress.
Kia ora, talofa, g'day. Well, I'm Brendon. I'm here, and I often ask myself, what am I doing here? And it's mainly that I was in a situation in my late 30s. My wife and I at the time were having kids, and our first baby came. It was a fairly normal birth, and everything seemed fine. Our second baby was we were in hospital 14 weeks before we were due, and not allowed to leave hospital with what we call placenta previa. So baby was born about 7 weeks premature, and we weren't allowed home for about 5 weeks after that. My wife didn't have a driver's license. I knew how hard that was for her. I didn't realise until we were home with baby how tricky it was with two babies at that age. And of course, I came home from work one day and said, "What's the matter? Do you want me to stay home with baby or something?" And she said yes. So I became the at-home dad within a month, and that was the beginning of me trying to figure out how hard that was, and realise I was a bit lost. I was a bit down for that year, and it took me a while before I came right and started realising there were lots of other dads out there. Found a magazine. I managed to connect with what was the Father and Child Trust in Christchurch in those days, and that was a group of at-home dads who we all realised we had similar adjustment issues for ourselves. Sometimes it was the adjustment of our wives and them missing the kids that really was the bulk of the issues. But within the Christchurch team, they had a great connection with the Plunkett postnatal support in Christchurch. And so that connection still exists. So I think we might find one of them on today. And we just know that wherever there's a mum's support group like that, there should be a dad's one, or at least a dad or a phone number for those dads that want it. Just so that the dad understands what the mum's group does and how that works. Just to check whether there's anything he can do, or maybe things that he shouldn't do. And then, of course, just in case, to check whether he's okay too. So that was where my initial work started. Was actually I ended up helping with the magazine a little bit, but realising there were guys that were going to be at-home dad, and they weren't getting any information from the midwives. They weren't getting what they thought they wanted from the antenatal classes, and in some cases they were a bit down or not coping or not sure how to manage the dynamic. And of course, we opened a little office in Auckland, and that got very quickly flooded. We put out a magazine for new dads. That magazine, I can tell you, the phone just went off the dial after the month after that. As soon as you put the word out there that there's something for the dads, the the demand goes straight up. You have to, be careful what you ask for. So that I was so glad that within a couple of years of that work starting, PATA, or the original version of PATA, started up. And of course, they always seemed to want a dad in the group. They had Harold, our founder from Christchurch in the early years, and then he sort of retired, and I got to take over a part-time role with PATA, which is, I always found it more that I was learning about what's good, about bonding, about what's, understand the birth, understand the tricky births, understand how, well, some of the mums have quick recovery, some of the mums have medium recovery, some of the mums, it can take them months physically, hormonally, and otherwise to recover from a birth. And not many dads understand that stuff. And not many dads appreciate how important they could be, both to mum and to baby in those first few months. So really, it's more about sharing that information and getting guys ready that I hope our work can focus on. We do have to catch the odd dad. We do have to catch the odd couple. But more work we can do at the top of that cliff, the better. Just getting dads ready for the changes in the relationship, getting dads ready for what might be the crazy first 6 weeks, and getting some dads ready to be a parent, to actually be involved with baby and not only get their own bond and their own parenting role started, but to give mum a break. Because we just knew that half the situations that were finding themselves in trouble, the mums were overloaded. The mums were doing all the baby, all the housework, probably trying to look after dad as well. And it's just too much. And we had to get the dads to do some dishes, do some cooking, look after baby, and just both give mum a break and, get out of work, because some of those dads were still working 10 hours a day, See, I'm not sure how many slides you want to see, but what we knew was that all around the world, and in Australia especially, there were some great studies being done about how, for every 10 mums that they were helping in New South Wales, there was 9 dads that needed help that were getting nothing at all. And then we found that there was something like that in the UK, but we finally got this about 3 years ago in New Zealand. I don't know if you can see those figures, but at 8 months in the pregnancy, 2.3% of dads and 14% of mums have a clinical level of anxiety or depression. So that's not a heck of a lot of dads, but that's a lot of mums. And of course, PATA only realised this sort of halfway through their evolving growth, that it's actually more mums get a antenatal anxiety issue than postnatal. So we know there's some other great stats about how, what was it, about a third of those carry through to probably having postnatal issues too. But when it's postnatal issues, it's 4.3% of dads. That's about 2,500 dads a year in New Zealand getting what we will call a clinical level of depression or anxiety, and probably getting no help at all. And obviously when the mums numbers drop down to 12%, yeah, but those 12% are probably more intense levels of depression and anxiety than what it was at antenatal. So, why the government can't figure out that this is the point where all the money should go, I never understand. I just know that even the author of that study said this is an abnormal figure for men, and there's been very little done to identify what the symptoms are or what we should do about it. So all we know is that there's lots of great research in the UK, especially the Fatherhood Foundation is now run by a great Australian woman. I can't think of her name at the moment. But, the effects or the benefits of engaging dads early, the effects on mums if dads are not engaged in their recovery, it's just really clear. that if dad doesn't understand what mum's going through or what that help program is that she's doing, mum probably doesn't get better. And of course, that's partly because dad's not understanding and doing the right things or stopping the things that he might maybe shouldn't be doing. So we just know that as soon as we get some of these issues out in the air, and you hear about, might be conception, it might be miscarriages, terminations, anxiety in pregnancy, the premature births, recovery from a cesarean, it might just be baby blues that didn't get addressed, so it led to worse. All we can say is dads don't understand any of those words, let alone what they are. And all of those issues might be affecting mum. So either directly because mum's got those issues, or directly because dad's got those issues. And, not many of us dads understand any of it. Some of us went to the antenatal classes, but we didn't really follow that side of things. We just knew there was a birth coming and we had to be ready for that. So, what is it? We can't always get all the dads before baby. But this is what we know has helped in, some of the antenatal classes, some of the maternity wards, and obviously wherever there's a baby, special baby unit, we want to have these booklets lying around. We've been told, if it's got pictures on it, the dad might read it. So, we just want dads to understand some of that hormone change stuff. Some of them have no idea that the stress hormones hit mum and the stress hormones hit dad around the week of baby. That mum's testosterone goes up and dad's goes down. And so all of a sudden there's a bit of a tension in the air. There might be a little bit of a, I'm upset, I'm worried. Why? Well, because you're upset and worried. And some of the couples just think this is a bad situation that they might have an argument about. It's just the natural state of the hormones. And we talked to some of these dads afterwards, and they did not understand any of it. But, if we inform dads on how to be a good partner around baby time, and don't expect mum to be at your beck and call like she was, do we need to have a little chat with the dads away from the mums? And we just know that lots of antenatal classes, if you can get the dads to just sit in a room on their own for half an hour, check, did they understand what was going on back there? Did they have any other questions of their own? Lots of talk comes out. And obviously it just closes some of the gaps, fills some of those areas where dads didn't, you might not have heard what PND stood for. You might not have heard how tricky it can be after a cesarean for mum. And obviously, does dad understand that in that first day that baby is born, baby is looking for dad? Baby knows mum. Baby will very quickly identify with and recognise mum. Hopefully, baby will remember dad's voice from when they were inside. And in some cases, the best thing to calm baby, the best thing to give mum a break is dad's voice. Can he help calm baby just by using his gentle voice or something? So we just know that there's also this team approach to parenting, which we wish was part of all the antenatal classes. There was a group of students, the occupational therapy students from AUT came and saw us one day, and they said that there should be a co-pregnancy, co-parenting conversation. Every couple should be asked to talk about, who's going to do what, how are we going to do this together. And even if it doesn't work out exactly how they thought, they'll be in a much better position to adjust. And, dad keep doing the lawns, but he better do some washing and cooking, and mum can keep doing the ironing or something, but she better not have to do baby all the time every day, So we just know that that conversation and that team approach to supporting each other, most couples that get that information, they'll survive any tricky issues. and they'll get through those first tricky months. And yeah, you know, half the reason we want dads in there is because they help mums. You know, in some cases, it's really important that there's somebody there supporting mum, helping her realise it's never easy. It's fine if she's just fed baby and she's tired afterwards and she can have a rest and don't feel guilty about that. You know, there's lots of little practical ways that dad can help. But when you look at the tricky situations, and the research says that, you know, there's this unfortunate sequence where if a mum had a difficult time with her own mum in her infancy, she's at very high risk of postnatal depression. And there's a chance that she won't have the skills or the knowledge to bond and be with her baby. So they know that a positive relationship with her father will alleviate most of the ongoing effects of one of those sort of situations. There's ways that we know it's good for baby to get a bond with dad as well. That babies with a good bond with mum and dad by 3 years old are, emotionally, academically, and socially set for life. So that bonding should start from day one with dad. That if the dad gets to start his bond really early, he's getting the hormones in that first week of baby, and he's in a much better position to care, to be a protective, nurturing parent. And then if you don't trigger those protective, nurturing, caring things while he's in that hormonal state, while you're in that first week or two of baby, he may not ever really get it. He may not realise that he's a nurturing, loving, caring parent too. And of course, some dads don't get asked to hold baby. They don't get told to feed baby. They don't get asked to bath time. So they go back to work and they think, oh, she's right, I'll get on with my thing. And that's not only dad missing out, that's baby missing out, and that's probably mum left alone, isolated at home, overloaded. So we know dads need to be available, and dad needs to put some time in. In some cases, most of what we know dad is needed for is to look after the 3-year-old so that baby and mum can breastfeed in peace or something. So we just know that there's lots of other ways we could go on about that dads might help. But as practitioners, and some of the midwives and some of the postnatal support ladies, and obviously some of the SIFS ladies will know, you know, there's times when dad isn't right. And there's times when dad didn't expect this relationship to have a baby in it, or he's not the kind of emotionally available dad, he's not offering any practical support, or he's not even taking any interest. We've either got to do some work there, and again, you know, you're probably better off to send that dad to somebody like us, or, you know, some of the good midwives I know can encourage the dads to get involved, come to the scans, come to the birth. That might be the trigger that helps dad realise he can help. And yeah, we're dealing with lots of different couples, and especially in Auckland nowadays, you know, some of them come from places where dads didn't do baby. Dads are not expected to help. They're normally, we know from, I think Trina will remember the wonderful Asian day we did in Auckland. We had Japanese, Thai, we had some Philippines, we had Korean, Chinese, Indian mums. All of them said what they wanted and what they were expecting and what they were used to was having their mum around for that first month that they had their first baby. And we know that not many of them have got that in Auckland. So dad has to be there. And if dad isn't going to be there, if he hasn't got a month off work or something, he better organise something. And it might not be easy for mum to figure out a friend or a person that she knows well enough to let her literally come into the house and help. So we often say to the dads, it's your job to find your sister or your best mate's wife that's just had a baby and get them involved, because that's what we all need, is that extra person around. Can't rely on, the midwife or the plunket lady to be there for those other, might be emotional, it might be just little practical things. If the dad is, one of those angry dads, one of those controlling, could be abusive dads, we've got to get him out of there. We've got to get her a safe, harmonious place where her and baby can be. We've got anger management courses, if that's any use. Part of what we offer at Kids Need Dads is a little course called Discovering Fatherhood. And that's just baby brain, baby play, baby safety, just trying to wake guys up to some of that stuff, because lots of dads just don't hear anything about what a baby's like. So we just know, that if mum's getting help herself, it's really important that, whatever she gets, dad understands. This is what Adrienne Burgess says. She's the lady that runs the Fatherhood Foundation. But, if the mum is having proper support, which includes dad, doesn't mean he's coming to those support groups. It means he's getting something too. Mum's depressive symptoms decline. If he's not included, what we know is dad's general health deteriorates. And we just know this. We see these dads coming into our office all the time. They're physically wrecked. They're exhausted, they're worried, they've tried, they're probably still working too hard. There might be money worries, there might be all sorts of other little background issues going on that he hasn't told anybody. Because he doesn't want to load his wife, and she was the only place he had for his offload prior to baby coming along. So we just know that there are times when mum thinks it should be fine. Mum thinks that her and baby have time, her and dad have time, and maybe dad and baby, get to see each other. Where it might be different for dad. It might be that he feels he still shares, helps, and wants to be there with mum, but he doesn't really get mum to himself anymore. And he sees baby and he gets to hold baby. He might even get to put baby to sleep briefly, but he doesn't really get to nurture baby. He doesn't get to play, or he's not doing enough time to get that bond going two-way. So we just know that sometimes what we're talking about here is mum letting dad in. And of course, we've got to help mums, combination of realise that they're probably the better parent, but that doesn't mean they should do everything. And it's sort of better for mum and baby if they could share some of it. And there's changes, these changes are really sort of hard for us to anticipate. We're usually in such a glorious place in our relationship when we're having our first baby. But of course, dads don't often see what that change is going to be, and that mum's really busy, mum's tired, mum's got to do baby, mum's got to do lawns, laundry, and might be bloody nappies washing and everything. So for reasons he doesn't understand, she's not available. And of course, we might be expecting our wife to be just like our mum was. And of course, our mum was fully supported and available and did everything. And of course, some mums are expecting their husband to be like their dad was. And he did nothing about kids, or, he didn't seem to do anything with babies. So she's not expecting him to do anything with babies, which is a shame, because he could be really keen and not sure whether to get involved or not. But as long as we understand that it's a whole new world, it's a whole new combination. Each couple is a different combination, and they have the right to work out who does what, how they can help each other, and don't let anybody get overloaded. we know that to look out for, any what do you call pre-factors that might be useful to know about. You know, I can tick nearly all of these. I had a new job when we were having our first baby. I was starting at 4 a.m. Used to wake my poor wife up before I went. We had money worries with a new house. We were finishing that house. We were selling it. We sold our house and moved while my wife was in hospital with our second baby. It was very awkward for her. If you have funny hours, if you have, might be a new management job or something you've just taken on, if for whatever reason you as a family, you're isolated from your usual family and friends, these are very common issues in the stories we hear. And this is the funny thing at my work, we check with the dads when they come in. Sometimes this is just after a really funny separation. And we ask them, was any of these issues, did you understand the hormones? Did you work too hard? And all of these dads roll their heads and say, if only I had known. So we know that some of that, what might be, situations might be mitigated. Some of the reasons that we want dad involved with the parenting side of the antenatal classes, it's actually because he's the one that knows if mum's okay. There's quite a lot of stigma. There's a lot of, proud mums who don't want people to know if they're struggling. Understandable. But, if mum's not likely to call, it's really useful if dad has this option to call about himself. And, 90% of dads, you ask them, how are you? You'll say, I'm fine. But you flip over this flyer here and it says, how was things in the pregnancy? How was the birth? Was there anything tricky in that first year? And he'll realise actually there's lots of things that he doesn't know whether they're okay or not. And he may not have the Plunkett number. He may not have the midwife's number. At least if he gets to talk to somebody, the first person might be a bloke that's been through some of that. He'll get an idea where his situation sits. And yeah, sometimes it's about checking in with dad.
Brendon, Trini here, just let you know you've got 5 more minutes.
Thanks. Man, this is the quickest version of this I've done, isn't it? And yeah, we know that the governments should back both parents. That's a child's right to be backed. And the main reason we're sort of always checking about whether dad's included in the antenatal classes, something like 5% of children under 5, they're in a solo dad situation. So, what is it that dad needed to know just in case, mum's not well or mum doesn't last? And I hate to say this, but there's very few, but we still get them. Because, we got one in Tauranga last year where mum passed away in childbirth. Dad's got baby, what's he need? So we just know that there's lots of reasons why we should, check on dad or give him a bit of information. We know that Kids Need Dads are not the only people trying to help here. There's great work at the Great Fathers website. Their website's probably better than anybody for their toolbox page and just giving dads some cartoon versions of what's going on here. And yeah, we just know that if we get this right, we shouldn't be talking about mothers being the problem. It's usually a whole family issue. And we should be saying it's about stable families. It's not about perfect families. And it's more happier children and more likely we'll have some workplace productivity because dad's not worried like heck all the time while he's at work. I think the country would be much better if all of our postnatal and family support just had a little bit of dad's work bolted onto the side. And yeah, there's some videos there if anybody really wants. Thanks.
Great. Question that we have from Erin down in Perinatal Wellbeing in Canterbury. Who's in Christchurch for them to refer their dads to?
Nobody yet. We've got the 0800 number, and I'm afraid all those calls come to me at the moment. But that's what we recommend for now for Kids Need Dads. We know that if you're in the Wellington region, there's an 0508 number, and that will get you to Ellen in Wellington. But we actually hope soon there will be, that number goes to Luke, or it may be that we actually get another young guy that works alongside Luke. And yes, we are trying to find funding right now for Christchurch to have another person who works alongside Cliff, who's our wonderful courses and separation support guy we've got in Christchurch. But yeah, we haven't had enough funding for a support person in this area in Christchurch for about 5 years now. We do want one, and we are working on that.
Peter Crosland, can he briefly talk about the Kids Need Dads new pilot project, Info for New Dads, which will launch after lockdown? So Peter, yes, if you want to unmute, you're welcome to jump in for a minute and tell us about that project.
Yeah, hi. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Right. Hi, Brendon. I work with Brendon in K&D. I'm a Wellington representative. And we have gained funding to launch a new program of trying to get information to new dads, which are a very difficult group of guys to get hold of. And the way we are working this as a pilot in Wellington is we've got a whole lot of printed material, including Why Dads booklets. And the intention is to distribute these through existing ante and postnatal class service providers, the likes of Play Centre and Plunkett and so on. And we were just about to launch this. We've got everything printed, ready to go just before lockdown. In the meantime, it's sort of on hold, but our guy who's based in Carterton has actually started to produce some videos, and for us to become much more present and active on the social media. And we actually got a grant from MSD's Community Rebuild grant to get some video equipment to enable us to get some decent videos made. And he's about to start using that. So it's really quite exciting. But the new Dads Information Project, it will be launching probably in about a month, 6 weeks. We will start distributing. This pilot is Wellington region and Manawatu. And if this pilot is successful and we get a good uptake from dads, we will take it nationwide and seek funding to do this all around the country. We are hopeful that the dads will get this information. We're channeling it through the mums, obviously. But we already have a connection with Parent Centre, who actually sent one of our new dads flyers out in their magazine. It went out this last month. So that's what we're doing down in Wellington. Watch this space. And but I do reflect on what Brendon said is, and we're aware of this, and associated with getting this information out is the expected response coming back from dads. So we have established an 0508 telephone number, which is on all these publications, so that there is a guy somewhere here who will answer the phone for any dads who want to talk. So that's what we're doing down here. Thanks.
Great stuff, Peter.
Excellent, that's great, Peter. Good to know what's available, and hopefully that's a service that will be then cloned and oh, excuse me, and then available around the rest of New Zealand. Erin down in Christchurch said that she's definitely interested in helping distribute the information and collaborating So nice to know we've got people on the ground there able to do that out. Now, if anybody else has got any other questions, feel free just to type that into the chat box. Otherwise, we'll wind up and let you get on with your busy days. Somebody says we have a need in Queenstown. Anything available in Queenstown, Southland region?
Well, please send us your addresses or anything you can to just connect, because I'm quite happy to send you some resources and get this started. I'm currently funding, just working on funding applications for Central Otago and Southland. So it's the first time we've actually directly asked the COGs or people in that area to just help us pay for a bit of the distribution of these resources. We've got to grow into the Waitaki, Dunedin, Southland and Canterbury rural, as well as Central Otago areas. We know there's nothing there. And we know that just by getting the resources into the antenatal classes or the blanket groups, that'll be a start, and we'll be able to assess what's needed soon after that. We can see from some of the MSD 2013 census numbers I've been getting, there's a lot of families in those areas. There's a lot of families in Central Otago, there's a lot of families in Southland, and there's quite a few families in Timaru, I realise now. So yeah, we've definitely realised where the families are, and we're focusing on those areas, and we're going for funding, even just a little bit of money to get these booklets and brochures out there. Ideally, those places will have what we call a dad's champion or a dad's navigator in the area, and they can maybe take phone calls and help with resources, or might be that they direct you to the best help on the phone.
Great, yeah, the person down in Queenstown says, Queenstown Plunket, we have distressed new fathers with financial distress to boot.
Bound to be.
Yeah, definitely. Peter in Wellington has got the publications there, and he's put his mobile number. I'll make sure that goes out in the email that I will send to you with all those links and information in them for the recording. Great, well, it looks like that's the end of the questions. So thank you, Brendon, for your time this morning, talking to us about the dads do get postnatal depression as well, but also how dads can help support mums when they're going through their journey too. So Brendon's details will be available on the email, so feel free to get in contact, and it's nice to know that there's all the other sort of services that are popping up around the country as well.
Thanks, Trina.
Great. Thanks, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day. The recording will be available this afternoon, and we look forward to seeing you next week when we're talking with Joanne Rama about supporting our Māori whānau. Great. Ka kite.
Very good. Cheers for now.